Miss Mallet, get a hold of yourself. It means get a hold of yourself means control yourself. It is your duty to tell the court what you know. They will decide if what you say in any way incriminates the prisoner. Now please go on. Now these are the words of a lawyer. Okay. Now he tells Miss Mallet to control herself, that she should not go out of control and start crying. Miss Mallet dried her tears and continued. He said that he travelled backwards and forwards to France on business of a variety difficult nature. Did he say anything about America? Well, he did say something about George Washington making a great name for himself with history, and that England was handling the American situation very badly. But I don't think so. He meant. Then when she was continuing her words, she was stopped and interrupted, and the judge said, "Thank you, Miss Mallet. You may step down. I now call Dr. Mallet. Dr. Mallet, can you identify the prisoner as the man you saw and spoke to on the night referred to by the previous two witnesses?" Now children, over here we see that how the investigation is going on. Dr. Mallet says, "I cannot, sir. Is there any special reason?" "There is. Has it to do with the fact that you were held prisoner for long period without trial in your native country?" "Dr. Mallet, they tell me so." "So can you remember anything at all?" "My mind is a complete blank." So he just gets on to this point only, that he doesn't remember a single thing, as his mind is a complete blank. The Attorney General dismissed the witness and sat down. At this point, something very strange happened, which was later believed decisive in the outcome of the trial. The counsel for the defense was questioning witnesses who claimed they had seen the prisoner get off the Dove Mail and travel back some miles to where the army waiting to go to America was stationed. Another witness claimed that he had seen the prisoner waiting in the town coffee shop for someone. So these are all the witnesses. Altogether there are 7 witnesses. Then something very strange happened. Let's see what strange happens. Counsel means advisor. Something very already decided. Something very strange happens. Let's read out. You can see this is the scene going on. Here Charles Stanley is standing and he's being investigated. Now let's read further. Suddenly, Mr. Carton, one of the lawyers for the defense, scribbled something on a piece of paper and handed it to Mr. Stryver. Now, this Mr. Carton was one of the lawyers for defense. For defense means he would be protecting Charles Stanley. So he wrote something very roughly on a piece of paper and gave it to Stryver. Stryver was the Attorney General. So lawyer in charge of the cross-examining. Stryver, a large, well-fed man who looked considerably older than his years, read the note and prepared to ask the witness a question. This man, Stryver, if you see his build, he was a large, fed man. He was a fat man, though he was not so old, but because of his disposition, because of his appearance, he looked quite older than his years. "You said that the person you saw was indeed the prisoner?" "Quite sure." "Did you ever see anybody like the prisoner?" "Not so like the prisoner that I could be mistaken." "Look carefully upon that gentleman." Now Stryver pointed to his colleague. Who was his colleague? This colleague was Sidney Carton, who at that point removed his wig. Wig is artificial hair. Though his long dark hair, the same length as a prisoner's, was not as well cared for, the resemblance between the two men was striking. So, though Carton had the resemblance with Charles Stanley, his hair was not so well cared. But from the distance he could resemble Charles Stanley, and everybody could observe that. Now look at the prisoner. Are they not almost identical? The witness looked carefully at the two men, the lawyer and the prisoner. "I have to admit that they look the same." Just as Mr. Carter noticed that Miss Mallet had dropped onto her father's shoulder and shouted, "Officer, help that young lady. Can't you see that she will fall?" The officer of the court helps Dr. Manet take his daughter out of the courtroom. Soon after that, the judge called an end to the court and said that he would announce his decision in 1 hour. Now you can see nobody observed the lady, the beautiful lady. It was Mr. Carton. As we say that the case was adjourned for after 1 hour. Okay, when they would be meeting after 1 hour. Mr. Carton saw Mr. Lorry on his way off the courtroom. How is the young lady, Mr. Lorry? Distressed but better. Mr. Carton also approached the prisoner. He could see the anxiety on the accused's face. Who was this prisoner? This was Charles Darnay, and he had worry on his face. Okay, what was that worry for? He was worried about Miss Manet. You wish to hear of Miss Manet. She is much better. I am so glad to hear it. I am sorry to have been the cause of her distress. Distress is sadness, her sorrow. Could you tell her so for me? I could, I suppose. Now this is the conversation going on between Darnay and Carton. This Carton says, I could, I suppose. Please accept my thanks for your ingenious assistance. Ingenious means assistance which is out of way. Carton nodded his head. What do you expect, Mr. Darnay? Now this is Carton speaking. The worst. Okay. Now over here we come to know that Charles Darnay is ready to accept the worst in his life. That he is ready to accept any kind of verdict. An hour and a half passed before the judge came back with his decision. Frenchek had gone to get himself something to eat, and as he climbed the steps to the courtroom, he saw Mr. Lorry hurry towards him. Jerry, take this message back to Tillson's. Mr. Lorry handed Jerry a piece of paper on which it said, not guilty. Jerry smiled and looked at Mr. Lorry. So again, a secret message in code words was passed on, and it was written not guilty. So who was not guilty? Charles Darnay was supposed to be not guilty. He was not. Now he was relieved. If you had seen the message recalled to life again, I would have understood what you meant this time. So by this time, this Jerry Cruncher had already come to know about recall to life, and it was a new message which he found. Some minutes later, Dr. Manet, Lucy Manet and Mr. Lorry stood gathered around Mr. Darnay, congratulating him on his escape from death. Darnay kissed Miss Manet's hand gratefully. Gratefully means thankfully, okay, and turned to shake hands with Stryver, who had just pushed his way into the company. Push him means join them in the company. I owe you my life, Mr. Stryver. So this is just a generous way to, be grateful to somebody that my life is all because of you. I'm glad to have cleared your name, Miss Darnay. Mr. Lorry stepped out from behind the large man. Mr. Lorry also enters there. He says, I'm glad to have cleared your name. You did a remarkable job. You think so? Well, you ought to know. You were there all day. So who is being spoken about over here? It's Mr. Lorry. Yes, but Miss Manet is not well, and it has been a tiring day for us all. I suggest we all go home now, said Mr. Lorry. Now, you can see, speak for yourself, said Mr. Stryver loudly. I have got a night's work to do. I speak for myself, Mr. Darnay. Miss Lucy and Mr. Lorry looked at Dr. Manet, whose face seemed frozen, and whose eyes were fixed on Darnay with a curious, intent look, a frown of dislike and distrust. Lucy softly laid her hand on her father's, and it seemed that there was an attack of malady. Malady is again the same illness which he was facing in his previous years in prison. My father, shall we go home, my father? Her voice shook the shadow of the doctor's face, and he agreed. Shook the shadow off the doctor's face means doctor was again lost in his past. Therefore, all of a sudden, this lady, when she spoke, he came back to his real self. Soon a carriage was brought round, and Lucy and the doctor got in. Then Miss Lorry left wishing Darnay well as this driver. Charles Darnay was now alone. Mrs. Carton had been leaning against the wall, watching from a distance, whom everyone left. Carton came over to where Dane was standing. Well, how do you feel? I hardly feel I belong to this world, yet I am also faint with hunger. Now he says that I am equal. Now he had already lost hope that he would survive, but now he says that I am also faint with hunger. Okay, let me take you to a little nearby tavern. Tavern is the inn where you can take rest and have some food. Then soon, therefore, in dark place below ground level, they sat by themselves at a table in the corner and ordered. While eating, Carton looked at Dane intensely. Intensely means deeply. How does it feel to have the sympathy of and compassion of such a fair lady, Dr. Dane? Is it worth being tried for one's life? Dane did not say a word, and Carton continued. Now over here, he is making a double, strike on Miss Dane, that how does it feel to have sympathy and compassion from a fair lady. Now Dane did not speak anything, but then he continued. He kept on continuing talking about Miss Manette. She was very pleased indeed to receive your message when I gave it to her. Not that she showed it, but I think she was. These words reminded Dane that the disagreeable companion had of his own free will helped him, so he decided to change the subject. Now Dane could understand that this man, out of his own will, he came to help him, and now he was trying to, because Dane had been thanking him, he purposely tried to change the subject onto Miss Manette. I wish to thank you for what you did for me today, Mr. Carton. I don't want thanks. I don't even know why I did it, Miss Dane. Let me ask you a question. Of course, anything. Do you think I like you? Dane was surprised by the question, but answered truthfully. Really, Mr. Carton, I have not asked myself. Now, ask yourself now. You act as if you do, but I don't think so you do. I don't think I do, you're right. Well, I hope we will part good friends and you will let me pay the bill. So this is Dane. As Dane paid the bill and rose to leave, Carton called out abruptly, I wish to tell you something. I care for no man on this earth, and no man on this earth cares for me. So over here he says that he's a lonely personality, and a careless personality doesn't care for anyone. Okay, and he knows that no one on the earth does care for him too. That is a great pity. You have many talents, Mr. Carton. Maybe not. Maybe so, maybe not. Dane, good night. When his companion left, Carton put his head down on his hands and fell asleep on the table in the tavern. So here, Carton did not go home. He stayed back at the tavern and fell asleep. At about 10 that night, the waiter in the tavern came and woke Carton. Is it 10 already? He said, shaking his sleepiness from his head. He got to his feet and walked down the street to where Stryver had his office. Stryver was busy in front of pile of papers when Carton walked in. You're late, kid Sydney. Just a quarter of an hour. These are the words of Carton. By the way, Sydney, how did you think that identification trick? So here we see Carton in the mood, in a very depressed mood. Now by chance, really, I was thinking about a handsome fellow he was and how much like him I might have been. Stryver laughed and then pointed to a large pile of papers. There is a work for tomorrow and don't be late with it. I won't. Sydney, do you remember our days in the student quarter in Paris where we tried to pick up French and French law? You were always much better at it than I. Yet look at you now, working for me and earning a clerk's wage. Now both of these characters were classmates. Okay, they studied together. They passed the law together. But you see, and he was better than Stryver. But now at the present, he was working as a clerk. He was taking a salary of a clerk. You are always better at making yourself heard. I just can't be bothered. So over here you see the carefree and careless nature of Carton. What a pity, Sydney. What a pity. But I do believe I can do nothing to change you. So even this man, Stryver, is Now he has given up. He knows that whatever you do, Sydney is not going to change himself. Stryver put on his coat to leave and turned to Carton. And what did you think of a pretty witness, Sydney? Now, Stryver could also observe that Sydney was a bit interested in Miss Manette. Pretty, is she not? No. That's strange. I could swear you looked at her very fondly. He says, I could say that it's very strange that you say that she's not pretty, but you were looking at her with loving eyes. That's strange. I could swear you look at her very fondly. Carton showed Stryver down the stairs with his candle. Outside, it was cold grey night. He came back into the office and collapsed at a desk and cried till papers on it were wet with wasted tears. Wasted tears means though he was crying for someone, but nobody was there to, understand its value. He knew that he could do nothing to stop the sadness eating away at him like an incurable disease. So that shows that he had suppressed his feelings, and incurable disease refers to love. So he had fallen in love with Miss Manette, for whom he could do any damn thing, but he had suppressed his feelings just for the sake of the couple, that is Charles Darnay and Miss Manette, who liked each other. So we're going to read up till here. The rest will continue in the next video.